Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Kevin Coons. I'm the assessor of the Town of Wallingford. I want to thank everyone for being here this evening on such a warm evening. It's nice and cool in here tonight, so hopefully it'll be that way at the end of this presentation. I'll just begin by explaining Gary's going to be talking about a revaluation in for a 5-year cycle, but Wallingford's a little bit unique. The state redistributed the schedule of revaluations for a lot of the towns in Connecticut, so some revaluations were postponed for a year, others were moved up a year, and some stayed the same. So in Wallingford's case, we got moved up a year. So we were originally scheduled for a 2025 revaluation, but now we're required to do a 2024 revaluation. So I guess without further ado, I'll introduce Gary Fields. He's our project manager for the 2024 revaluation. He's going to do the PowerPoint presentation for us this evening. So with that, I'll turn it over to Gary.
Thanks, Kevin. Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Fields with Vision Government Solutions. We were contracted by the Town of Wallingford to assist with the revaluation here in 2024. So we put together just an informational slide deck here to review all about revaluation. We have a little agenda here I'd like to tell you about. We're going to talk about why are we doing a revaluation here in Wallingford. What are the goals of the revaluation? And one of the largest portions of work that we do as part of the revaluation is data collection. And that's when we go out in the field and measure houses and collect information. So it's very important that accurate data, the data be accurate. It's really the foundation of appraisal. And so we're going to talk about the steps that we took and are taking to verify the data. We're going to talk about the market analysis. What's happened in the real estate market here in Wallingford since the last revaluation in 2020? We all know that real estate values have gone up. Well, how much? And what we can show you some of the numbers and statistics that we've been coming up with and looking at. The thing is that this revaluation is, and the appraisal date is October 1st of 2024. So we still have about 5 months of sales to come in to help us set our values. But we wanted to give everyone an idea of what's going on and what the reval is about. So we'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about how we review our values, right? How do we know we did a good job? How do we know the values are accurate and consistent from one property to another? So we're going to talk about the kinds of checks that we do and the performance studies that we do to be sure that we have good, solid, uniform values. In November, the property owners here in Wallingford will receive a new value notice. And that notice will have the new value that's set. It will be your new appraised value as of October 1st of 2024. And we'll talk about we'll show you what that notice looks like and how you can verify if that value is good and consistent and is the data that the value was based on correct. So we'll show you how you can check that data. And then if you do check it and you look at other properties on your street or what have you, and you think that, gee, I think this is off or it's too high or whatever, you'll have the opportunity to call and or go online and set up an appointment to talk to one of the appraisers that appraise the property. So that's kind of the outline of what we're going to be talking about. So I'm going to jump into why revaluation. Why are we doing a revaluation? Well, Connecticut mandates that all Connecticut municipalities must revalue every 5 years. And Kevin was just talking about how they redistributed, the state redistributed the revals every year, and Wallingford wound up doing one just over 4 years. So the last revaluation was 2020, and this revaluation is for 2024. There's two types of revaluations. There's a full physical revaluation, and then there's a non-physical revaluation. Well, what's the difference? Well, a full physical revaluation is when every property, every building, every deck, every shed is measured, and we send staff out in the field to literally measure each building, check the information, and check the data. So that's a full physical revaluation. That's what was done in 2020. So in 2024, so it alternates every 5 years typically between a full physical revaluation and a non-physical revaluation. So this year, it's not a full reval, it's a non-physical, but that we still do visit some properties. We visit all of the permits that are taking place. People take out permits on their homes, and the assessor's office does that every year anyway. But we're also going to check the sale properties. One of the best ways to set values on property, especially residential property, is to look at the sales that have occurred neighborhood by neighborhood, and we want to make sure that those sales have good, solid data. So we are sending staff out to the sale properties, and they're collecting information about those and making sure that the data is accurate. So a revaluation, if we were to define it, what is a revaluation? It's the process of performing all the necessary data collection, market analysis, and valuation steps to determine accurate and equitable values for all properties within the town. So new appraised values for all properties translate to a fair distribution of the tax burden. Well, why do we use appraised value? Well, if you think about it, if I owned a house in Wallingford and you know, what portion of the value is my house of the total value of the entire town, right? Maybe my house is 0.0001% of the value of the entire town. So based on that, whatever the tax burden is to service the police and the fire department and the schools and all that, that's the same percentage of that budget, of that revenues that have to be raised, that I would pay, my fair share of the tax burden. So that's why they use appraised values. And that's what's used really throughout the country. We do work, our company does work in about 14 states now, and they're all based on appraised value. So this is not unusual how this is done. So the goal of a revaluation is to establish a fair representation of the value of your property as of October 1st, 2024. And the thing is that values of property can change differently over time depending on various attributes of properties, right? I mean, if all the properties just change the exact same amount, why don't we just raise the value the same percentage? Well, we don't do that because values can change differently, right? Different neighborhoods, some neighborhoods could become the hot spot in town, and those values have increased more than another area, or maybe another area there's a neighborhood that might have declined slightly as compared to the average increase. You know, it's not quite increasing like the others. Large houses versus small houses, expensive homes versus entry-level homes, different style homes, two-story homes, one-story homes, commercial property versus industrial property versus residential properties or condos. All properties don't change over time exactly the same. So what happens is values can get, you know, inequities can creep into the assessments, and you may wind up with some property owners paying more than their fair share of the tax burden and others paying less than that. So by doing a reappraisal or a revaluation, you bring everybody up to the new fair market value as of October 1st, 2024, and that just by doing that, you're correcting those inequities. And that in itself provides for property owners to pay their fair share, no more, no less than their share of the tax burden for the town. So those are really the goals of the revaluation. The revaluation is all about fairness, equity, uniformity. It really has nothing to do with raising taxes. Revaluations are considered revenue neutral, okay? So no new taxes are ever raised simply because there's a revaluation done. That's just not the purpose of it. You know, and we'll talk more about that as we go through, but it's all about making sure that everyone is appraised as of a more recent date so that everyone's paying their fair share of the tax burden. That's the purpose of the revaluation. So the first step in the revaluation process is the data collection phase. So this is where we have data collectors, staff go out in the field. Right now they're visiting sale properties. They're also looking at building permits, and they're looking at you know, they're measuring the properties, they're doing an interior inspection. You know, if the property owner is home at the time of inspection, data collectors asked to perform an interior walkthrough. They'll collect information like bedroom count and bathroom count and, you know, what's the physical condition of the property, right? And I don't know if anybody watches HDTV, I'm kind of a nerd, I do. You know, when people are walking through a house, that's kind of the same type of stuff we're looking at, right? Has the kitchen been remodeled? Has the bathrooms been remodeled? You know, if we have two identical homes and one has all that work done and someone else in another home hasn't, they're going to sell for different amounts of money, right? So, so we're looking at condition, bath count, bedroom count, is the basement finished or unfinished, all that type of information. So again, the 2024 project is a non-physical reval, but we are visiting the sale properties. And the next full revaluation here in Wallingford will be in 2029. And at that time, we'll be going out to every property in the town. It's pretty, you know, it can be an expensive undertaking, and that's why they skip it every other year and do a non-physical. Once every 10 years was determined to be, you know, adequate to be sure that the data is accurate. So property owners may also check their data online, right, to verify that their data is accurate. There's a website out there, and when you get your new notice, there's going to be a website address on there, and you can go in there, and I'll show you what that looks like in a little bit, but you'll have the list of all your data, what information your property value is based on, and you'll also have access to all the values and all the data throughout the town. You know, I got my notice about a year ago. They did a reval in my town, and I was like, oh, okay, so let me check this out. So I basically looked on the website, and I checked all the houses on the street, and I said, yeah, these are pretty close to what mine are. That makes sense. Yeah, I have 1.5 baths, 3 bedrooms. The data is accurate. I didn't make an appointment because it was consistent with the other properties, and the value seemed reasonable. But if you do that and you find that your property is, you have questions or want to see comps that we use to set the value or any of that, you'll have the opportunity to meet with us, and one of our appraisers will sit with you and go through it all and have you take down your concerns. Accurate data is vital to accurate values. I mean, it's very important to have the data accurate because those things drive the value in the system that we're using. So there's basically 5 phases of revaluation, right? We just talked about data collection when we're measuring buildings. The second phase is called market analysis, and this is where we collect market data that we can use to build valuation models, right? What kind of market data? Well, we look at sales of property and we verify those sales, and we look at costs of construction, right? For income-producing property or commercial property that might be leased, we look at income and expenses, and we capitalize that into a market value for commercial property. So that we gather all that information, and then we use that to create valuation models that will apply the values based on that market data consistently throughout the town. And that's what we're doing in the valuation phase. We're creating those models based on all that market analysis and data that we've captured. Another phase, phase 4, is the valuation review. And this is where once we establish value, we literally drive in our cars, certified appraisers that work for our company, they go out and they drive and they look at all the sales in the neighborhood, and then they go and they look at the properties that didn't sell. So we always want to treat the sale properties and the non-sale properties the same. So we'll compare property to property to the sales in the neighborhood, and we'll make adjustments if necessary to ensure that the values are uniform and consistent for similar properties. And then lastly is the informal hearings phase, which I just alluded to. We'll talk about that in depth in just a little bit. So in real estate appraisal, there's 3 main approaches to value, okay, that appraisers use. One is the sales approach. You know, if you had ever did a refinance or you bought a house and you had to hire an appraiser to come up with, so the bank could be sure that it was worth that kind of money. What do? They go out and they find some comps in the neighborhood, and then they adjust for differences between the comps and the subject, and they come up with a value for that property. We're doing the same thing, it's just that we're doing it on a mass basis. That's why they call it mass appraisal. So we're using all those sales to come up with those valuation models. So part of that is verifying the sales. That's why we go visit the sales. We like to talk to the new owner and find out if it was a family sale or was it on the open market. Is it an arm's length transaction? That's what you call that. Then we'll check trends since the last revaluation. We'll look at that in a bit. And then we stratify the sales. And all I mean by that is we group the sales. We'll group the sales by neighborhood. Is each neighborhood valued at the same level of assessment? Are different styles of homes valued at the same level of assessment? Are one-story homes worth more now than two-story homes? Large homes, expensive versus inexpensive homes? Old houses versus new houses? There's all kinds of different groupings that we try and find areas where the values may be high or low as compared to the sales. So in the end, the goal is really to make sure everybody is at fair market value as of October 1st. We also look at cost information, construction costs. We measure depreciation. We have two identical homes, yet one's brand new and one's 50 years old. You know, the older house is going to sell for less because there's work to do, right? So, well, how much less? So we have to, that's depreciation. We need to look at that and compare those old houses to new houses and see how much of an adjustment do we make when a property's older. And then again, the income approach is where we use for commercial properties, and we're going to analyze income and expense information and then capitalize that into a value. I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit more in just a moment. So those are the three approaches. So how have the values changed since the last revaluation, right? The last revaluation was in 2020. And if you look at this chart here, you can see that the median sale price of a home in Wallingford was about $280,000. That's just the midpoint of all the sales. If we look at the sales through May 1st, the 12 months preceding May 1st, you can see that the median sale price has gone up significantly. In fact, it's gone up about 43%. So on average, homes have gone up about 43%. Real estate has gone up significantly since the last revaluation. You know, and there's all kinds of reasons for that, right? You know, if you look historically, you know, between 2013 and 2020 or so, you know, property values didn't go up all that much, you know, less than 5% a year. Then when the interest rates dropped to 2% or 3%, all kinds of activity happened, right? Houses started getting gobbled up. And then the pandemic hit, right? And what happened then? Well, you know, there was an increasing need for people to work from home, right? So people were looking for bigger houses so they could put an office in their home, right? So they went out and started buying up the supply of homes out there. Urban centers, larger cities where homes are really close together. Some folks said, I'm getting out of here with this pandemic, and they went out to the suburbs and they moved and bought up properties out there. Remember the supply chain issues, right? Couldn't get all the materials in quickly, so that was part of the issue too, right? Construction costs went up significantly. That affected the market. And then once the value started going up quickly, investors started buying up properties because there was, you know, money to be made. You know, you can buy a property, you can fix it up and sell it, and then that snowball effect happened. So that's kind of all, you put that all together, and, you know, the bottom line is demand was extremely high on properties, buying properties, and the supply is very low. So it's really just a function of supply and demand. The supply even today, even with the higher interest rates, is still pretty low. You would think at some point it would start turning around. We think it will, but you just never know, right? So the main thing to keep in mind here when we're looking at this increase in value is, and it's very important to think about, you know, just because your new value is higher does not mean that your taxes will be going up. It just doesn't, okay? Because the values have gone up all over, right? So the new value is just one part of the equation when determining your tax bill later in 2025. In the spring of 2025, they'll be setting the budget, and then they'll be determining the mill rate, right? So, you know, remember, most properties have increased, so the mill rate, or also known as the tax rate, will be adjusted based on the budget set in 2025. Typically, when the values overall increase at this kind of rate, the mill rate is adjusted lower, okay, to offset for that, all right. We've seen this in town after town. Our company does, dozens of revaluations every year. This is not unusual that the values have gone up this percentage. Some have been more than that. We've had some that are 50, 60%, others 30, 35. So this is very typical of what we've seen from as we do all the revaluations throughout New England. So those were single families. Even the condominiums, when you look at the condominiums, the average price of a condominium in 2020 was $175,000. Now it's $251,000. Okay, again, one thing good about this, though, is that you can see that the condominiums and the single-family homes have changed similarly, right? If we were looking at this and just, for the heck of it, say the condominiums went up, 70% and everything else went up 43%, that'd be bad news for the condominiums. So that's really not what's happened. It seems pretty consistent. I mean, you just did a reval 4 years ago. So hopefully there's not too much areas that have changed differently than the typical amount. So those are just comparing overall sale price. Another thing we do to kind of see what the market's doing is these are resales of homes, okay? So these are single-family homes that have sold twice over the past 5 years or so. And we made sure that none of these had major improvements. They didn't have permits. They didn't like buy the house and then redo it and then sell it for a higher price. These properties sold in the same condition they were when they were first bought. So for example, a home on Whiffletree Road, March 20th of 2020, sold for $370,000. 40 months later, in July of 2023, that same house, without doing work to it, sold for $550,000. Pretty incredible. Quite an increase in value over the last 4 years. So that's a 49% increase. And all of these are like that. Here's another one in the Ridge area, sold in October of 2019 for $286,000. Sold again in September of 2023, right? 47 months later for $415,000, or 45% different. So when you get your new notice, you're going to see the old value and the new value. It's going to be higher, the new value, because all the values are higher, right, for residential property. I just want to show, this is actual market data here in Wallingford. So you can see this is where we're seeing this increase in value. Same thing with the condominiums. These are resales. Here's a condo that sold over in the Towers, August 19th of 2020 for $158,000. Sold again January 26th for $223,000. 41 months later, it increased 1% per month, or 41%. Okay, so same type of increase on the condominiums. So that's, we don't know how things are going to change between now and October 1st. Maybe they'll just remain flat. Maybe they'll even go up a little bit. Maybe they'll go down a little bit. We just don't know. So we still have 5 months of sales to come in to use in our analysis, but we wanted to get the information out there, let you know what we're working on and kind of what we're seeing so far. So what we do is we gather all that market data, and then what we do is create CAMA models, right? And what does CAMA mean? CAMA is a computer-assisted mass appraisal system. It's a software system, and all of our towns that we service have the Vision software, and it helps with the calculations. We never say, the computer set my value. No, appraisers set the value. The computers help with the calculations. That's basically what's going on. So we'll build building models and land models, land valuation models, depreciation schedules. We'll look at the outbuildings, garages, sheds, pools, et cetera. And we'll look at the income approach on the commercial property. So that's what we're doing. We're building tables and models so that we can assign the values consistently throughout the town. And just to give you some sense of our company's presence within New England, you can see all of these yellow highlighted cities and town here in Connecticut. We're about 75, 80% of them use the Vision software. And we do, I don't know how many, but at least 15 revalues a year in Connecticut. We've been doing the revals, I've been with the company since 1982. We've been doing revals throughout New England since 1975. So we're very familiar with the Connecticut real estate market. Well, how do we test the models? How do we know that we did a good job, right? What kind of quality control do we do to make sure that the values are consistent? So what we do is we run performance studies. And this tells us the performance of our models. Are they working well? And what we do there is we group sales by location. We look at the sales in each neighborhood, make sure that we're at the same level of assessment. Our assessed values are at the same level as compared to the sale prices, by location, by style of home, by age of home, by size of home, high-quality homes versus basic homes, houses that sit on large parcels of land versus those on small parcels of land, right? All those market forces make a difference when you're buying property. And we need to meet the state of Connecticut performance-based standards. The state of Connecticut, you know, the employees have to be certified. Our appraisers must be certified with the Office of Policy and Management. And when we're completed with the revaluation, we have to supply the state our statistics and our reports of how we did the revaluation. So there's certain standards that must be met by the state of Connecticut. Just to give you a quick sense on how these studies work, this is just a layout here of all of the sales over, I think it's about a year period, that shows us all the ranches. And you can see there were 86 ranch sales. And we're at 95%, 96% of value. So in other words, the median sale price is $351,000. We're at $337,800 right now. So as we look, so what we do is we compare the level of assessment that we're at for all kinds of different groupings to see if there's any areas we need to work on, right? So here we just want to make sure we're at the same level of assessment for the different style homes. We do this with the condominiums too. We look at each complex. And we look at the sales within each complex, and then we set our rates based on those sales. And again, we keep an eye on this median ratio to make sure that each complex is valued at the same level of assessment, creating uniformity and fairness. That's what the revaluation is all about. Just going to talk about commercial property briefly, just a little bit, because it's a little bit different. With commercial property, I had mentioned that we use the income capitalization approach. This involves the estimation of the present worth of anticipated future benefits, right? If I'm an investor and I'm buying a strip mall, I want to know what are the leases going to be, what's the rents going to be, how much vacancy is typical. I would subtract from that any expenses like taxes or heat and electric or whatever. And what's that net operating income? How much can I expect to make on this property? That's what investors are going to look at for commercial property. So the assessors, the 2 years prior to the appraisal date, send out income and expense forms, gathering that information from the commercial property owners. And we use that, to set those models for the income properties. So this approach is a valuation technique that capitalizes that earning capability of the property into a value. So just to show you, here's a sample income and expense form. You can see this is what's sent out to and this is confidential information. This isn't shared, the information about each property's rents or expenses or anything like that. So this will ask rents, what the rents are, what the gross income is, what the expenses are for each item like heat, fuel, water, sewer, whatever it might be. And then we come up with a net operating income here. So if we were to just walk through how this approach works, we're going to determine the net operating income of a commercial property. Let's just say it's $420,000. And then we're going to apply a capitalization rate, which is nothing more than the relationship between value and net income. And there's different methods to get that, to determine that, which I won't get into today, but that's what we use. And basically what that does is it capitalizes that net operating income into a market value. That's the income approach to value, and that's used in addition to sales and cost and all that for commercial property. Okay? And then the final review phase, okay? That's the parcel by parcel review, right, by our state certified revaluation personnel. So basically what we're doing is we're literally in our car and we'll drive it, I'll be assigned, Gary's assigned a neighborhood. I'll go out to the neighborhood and I'll look at all the sales in the neighborhood, then I'll say, okay, this is how we're treating these sales. What about all these properties that didn't sell? I need to make those be appraised similarly to the sale properties. So the sales and the non-sales are treated exactly the same, and we bring everybody up to market value as of October 1st, 2024. So we look for data consistency, we check the data, we check the quality grades, the condition factors, and we just check uniformity. Does this make common sense, right? You're driving down the street, I got 400 on that house, 420 on that, it's a little bit bigger, you know, and we just go down and make sure it's consistent. We also run all kinds of quality control checks at the end of the project. For example, we're out there looking at permits, and not all the properties are completed by October 1st, right? You might have a brand new house that's only 50% complete. So we need to send our staff out there in September and make sure we have the correct percent complete on those properties, because, you know, if someone's building an addition and that addition's only, let's say, 50% completed on October 1st, they should only be assessed for 50% of that item. The other thing we do, and I'm big into, are these old to new reports. We run reports by different groups of properties, and we look at the old value from 2020, and we look at the new value that we just placed on this property, and we look at the ratio. And we go down and we say, okay, 43, 44, 46, 40, oh, this one's 70% higher. They're coming in for a hearing probably. So I'm going to look at that now and say, is there a mistake by any chance? Did somebody key something wrong? Or, well, wait a minute, that's one that had a permit and they put a new addition on. So that's why that one went up more than the other one. So we go through all these spreadsheets and we check the percentage change. And anything that's changed, you know, abnormally as compared to the average, then we take a second look at it and make sure that it's correct. So we do a lot of work to make sure this is as accurate as possible. There's 16,000 properties, Kevin, something like that. Yeah. So, you know, and each one has 100 bits of data on it, or at least. That's a lot of information. So we do our best. We're not perfect, but that's one reason we have the informal hearing. So if there's something that's incorrect or you want clarification, everyone will have the opportunity to come in and talk to us about it. So let's talk about that, the informal review hearings phase, right? What to expect? What can the property owners expect here in Wallingford? What are the key dates that you'll see? So assessment value notices will be mailed to property owners in November this year. Okay, probably by mid-November you'll get your new notice in the mail. And informal review hearings will be scheduled during November and December this year. So we'll schedule those right. We'll probably be done by, it'll be done by Christmas, but we'll probably do some in November and then the rest in December. Property owners can schedule their own appointments. We have a scheduling tool online where you can go in and schedule your own appointment, or you can just call a 1-800 number and we have staff on call waiting to help you through setting up your appointment if you choose to do that. Informal review hearings can be by phone. If you just have a quick question or you just want to tell us that you have 2 bathrooms, not 3 or something, don't want to make a trip in just for that, you could make a phone appointment. One of our appraisers will call you. Or if you want to come in, you can come into the town hall here. We'll have signs of where direct you right to the room where the appraisers are, and you can come and sit with us, and we'll answer all your questions and go through the property record card with you. Now, anyone that comes into an informal hearing will get another notice. We'll get a second notice in January or so. This is after we gather all the information you tell us about the property. We may change it, we may not change it. We're going to send you a notice to let you know what the result of your informal review hearing was. So anyone that comes in will get another notice. So, well, what's the notice look like? So here's a screenshot here of your notice. There's a few items on here that are important. that you want to take note of. You'll notice up here under number 1, you'll see the PID number, which stands for parcel ID number. Every parcel in the town has a number assigned to it. And then the excuse me, the appointment type, whether it's residential or commercial. We want to make sure that if it's a commercial property, you're meeting with a commercial appraiser. If it's a residential property, you're meeting with a residential appraiser. So that will be noted on the notice. You'll have your prior assessed value and your new assessed value. The new ones will 99.9% of the time be probably much higher than it was back in 2020 because the real estate market's gone up. So that's where you'll see your value. You'll also have a website listed here, and will give you access to the assessor's online database. So if you go to that website on the Vision Government Solutions website, it'll say online databases, and you'll go there and enter into the Wallingford, and I'll show you a screenshot of what that looks like. You'll see all your data right there. So you want to be able to do that. That's how you check it to make you, to be sure that you're comfortable with the new value that was set, right? You want to look and see, is the data right that they based my assessment on? Is it consistent with other ones in the street? That's what you want to do. And if you look at it and you say, yes, that's reasonable, well, then probably no need to make a hearing. If you don't, you think it's incorrect in some way, then come in and see us. And also, there'll be instructions to schedule an informal review hearing down here, okay? You'll have a website that you can go to and schedule your own appointment. If you don't have access to a computer or you don't want to bother with that in any way, that's fine. We have a call-in center. You can just call the 1-800 number, and we'll help you through setting up the appointments. I would recommend if you do have multiple properties, say you own 5 properties and you want to set up a appointment, if you go online and just set up one, if you have multiple properties, you're probably going to want to have a longer hearing, right? Because we're going to want to go through every single property. And if you have multiple properties, I think it's best to call the number. This way we can schedule you more time. So we make sure we don't rush anybody. We want to make sure we go through the properties in detail. So we want to make sure you have enough time. So just if you have multiple properties that you want to discuss, just call the number and we'll get you set up. So that's the notice. And just to give you an idea what that scheduler looks like online, right? If you go to set up your own appointment, there's really 4 steps to that. The first step is to select your town from the jurisdiction list. We have revals going on all over New England right now. So there'll be other towns in there, but you'll just go in, you look for Wallingford, and you'll notice to the right here, you'll have a list of schedules, and it'll say by phone or in person. If you want to come into and that's important, because if you schedule an appointment, by phone, and you happen to put it on the in-person schedule, we have an appraiser here waiting for you to show up, and you're at home waiting for the phone to ring. So you just want to be able to, it's pretty clear there, but I'm just pointing out the fact that that happens once in a while. So we just want to make sure if it's going to be a phone hearing that you pick a phone schedule. Secondly, remember on the notice it said residential or commercial. You're going to want to select what type of appointment. We want to make sure you talk to the right person. Then down below you have a calendar here. Any of the dates that are available will be white. The rest will be grayed out. So if you just click on any of the schedules that have appointment slots open, over on the right side, you'll see all those time slots. And all you need to do is click, that one works for me. You click book it. And a little form will come up and ask you the parcel ID number, right, from your notice. And you'll fill out a few bits of information, and that's it. That's very easy to do. But again, just call the 1-800 number. If you don't want to go through that and you want to, however you want to do it, just give us a call. That's fine. So that's the appointment scheduler. Now, I was talking about the online database, and I think that's important. Right before we send out the notices, we're going to update the online database with all the new information, all the new values, and all the updated data from the visits that we did and all that. So when you go to that website, it'll say here, enter the online database. And when you enter, you'll have there'll be search by owner, search by address, or parcel ID number, or whatever. You have a bunch of options. And once you select your property, you'll go in and you can see here, you have all the information about your property. Number of bedrooms, bathrooms, what's the heat, the breakdown of the value, what year was the house built. You'll have a photo, you'll have a sketch of the property, right? Which will show, and there's descriptions that if there's a finished basement, it will show you where the finished basement is and all this information. This is what you want to check. Just go through it. Yeah, looks great. Or if there's an error or a problem or something's just incorrect, just call, set up an appointment. Some people want us to come out to the property and visit it. We're happy to do that. We'll set up appointments too. If you call, we have our meeting, and there's a few things I want to show you. The house is 44 feet across. You have it down as 50. Okay, well, you hold one end of the tape, we'll hold the other end, and we'll go out and measure it together. And we'll send staff out to make sure it's right. Our goal is to get everything as correct as possible and get the data as accurate as possible. So you'll have all that at your fingertips to help you decide whether you need to come in for an informal review hearing or not. Also in there that's helpful is an area that's taxpayer info that's right next to the online databases that you'll be in. And that has a whole section on information about revaluations. All the things I'm talking about today, there's videos in there of how land value is set and how building values are determined, and just and then a whole section on frequently asked questions, and we provide the answers to those. So sometimes when you're thinking of making an appointment, you might look at the frequently asked questions, and there's the question that you had, and there's the answer that you need. Again, if any way you want to meet with someone, just call and make an appointment. So what about the hearing itself? Just to give you some information about, well, what's that like? What happens? What happens during the hearing? These reviews generally take 10 to 20 minutes. Sometimes they're very quick and they take 3 minutes. Other times we're talking for 30 minutes. So it just depends on the complexity of the property and what the issues are and that type of thing. So about 10 to 20 minutes. The property owner will have an opportunity to review the data used to determine the appraised value. We'll discuss the value and the comps used. And the one thing we won't discuss, though, is taxes. We cannot discuss what your taxes will be because we don't know the answer to that yet. We may make adjustments during the hearing phase. After this phase, property owners could come in and meet with the Board of Assessment Appeals, right? So there could be adjustments then. So the values aren't really completed until like March of next year, 2025, when the budget's being set, all the hearings are completed. That's when we'll have the completed numbers for the town to look at the budget, look at the values, and determine what the new mill rate will be. Okay? These hearings are all about the value and the data that we've set your value on. Okay? So, you really don't need documentation. It's not required that you have documentation. You don't need to run out and get an appraisal. That's helpful. Obviously, that's a helpful thing if you have a recent appraisal. But, you might have pictures. Maybe the house has a condition issue, right? And, we need to do this work, or the foundation's cracked or something. You might want to take pictures of those things and bring them into the hearing when you meet with us. We'll provide instructions, even if it's a phone hearing, how to supply photos and things like that so we can, review those when we're making the decision whether to make an adjustment or not. So that's kind of how the reviews go. Now, after the hearing with Vision, it's informal, we're just reviewing it with you. Well, what if you still disagree? What if you come in and meet with Vision and we look at it and we're like, I think we're right. I don't think we should change it. And the property owner disagrees and thinks we should change it. That happens. You'll have the opportunity that this is just the first step of the appeals process. The next step is when you would meet with the Board of Assessment Appeals. Typically, the applications are being put out there in February, and the hearings take place in March. Is that right, Kevin? Yeah. So So you can go to the Board of Assessment Appeal and make your case to them as to, and certainly they may change it. Just depends on what the issue is. And then, after that, if that still isn't changed, you could always go to court and, fight it that way if we couldn't, come to agreement on the value. But if there's an issue, I'll tell you, Vision, our appraisers, our goal is not to get the highest value we can on a property. It's all about making sure that the data's right and the value is consistent with similar properties around it. So that's what our goal is. So, and if you have any questions, in the meantime about the revaluation or about how to schedule an appeal when we get to that part after the first of the year, you can call the assessor's office. I believe you'll have the applications online so they can go in and just...
On our town website.
Okay. So you'll have the applications there as you typically do every year. So that's kind of that's kind of an overview of the revaluation process, what we're doing. We're moving along. We're on schedule. We expect those notices to go out in November. Right now, we're out finishing up the field review, looking at properties, property by property. But we still have 5 months of sales to come in. So we don't know what the final numbers will be till we analyze those. But the project is progressing pretty well. So, if there's anyone here that has any questions or anything about the revaluation, you're welcome to come up to the microphone and ask your question. If not, that's fine too. So, any closing words?
I want to thank you very much, Gary, for giving us a pretty good, concise overview of the whole process. It was very thorough, I thought. Just a couple of things. As far as, now we do have our property record cards online. We have that existing database. Now, Gary, is there a way of, so we'll have our existing database online for 2023, but then you'll also have our reval file that you talked about in your presentation. Is there a way for the folks to distinguish the two?
Well, what we're going to do is replace the data that's on the.
Okay.
We're just going to say take the new data and replace what's on there now.
Gotcha.
So it'll all be updated
Okay.
by the time we send the notices out.
Okay. Just a couple of thoughts, and if you happen to see anybody that's out and about in the field, or if you have questions about the vehicles or whatever, now, all the employees of Vision Appraisal are registered with the police department, so if you have any questions or...
They typically have a vision vest. They'll have a letter of introduction from the assessor. They'll have a photo ID. They'll have signs on their car. So...
And even they've been leaving door hangers as well if they're not able to make contact with the homeowner. So, I guess let's see. I just want to appreciate everyone's cooperation. Thank everyone for coming in tonight, and I want to thank everybody that's been cooperative with the process. The more accurate the information is, the better the revaluation is going to be. The more successful it'll be. And also, I appreciate the folks that take the time to fill out the income and expense statements for the commercial properties. That's very helpful for us in establishing fair and equitable values. I think that's all I have. Again, thank you very much, Gary, for coming in to do this for us.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody has any comments or questions. They're welcome to come up to the microphone.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.